Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on volume 23 of Ace of the Diamond Act 2, chapters 202 to 210. So, we left off with old Ichidai Third facing Sen, with Maki's team facing Amahisa's team, but Amahisa's not pitching. Sawamura and KOSHU and Nabe have been sent to go watch this game alongside Mei's game that he just won against that team. They're into the semifinals, surprising no one. And so, yeah, so I'm pretty excited because I don't know. I'm gonna, if I were wagering, I would say that Ichidai Third's gonna win this, but I don't know. I feel like part of the lesson is going to be that Amahisa trusts his teammates to handle things when he's not able to play, and that's going to be a little nod to Sawamura entrusting the quarterfinals for Seidou into Furuya's hands. That seems like that's what's going to happen, right? I feel like that's a nice little parallel that could happen between these two teams, but yeah, so I'm recording this before the next volume comes out on Patreon and YouTube, just a little bit early. But I'm pretty excited. I unfortunately, I've said this in like nearly all of my videos, but I took an antibiotic and had a allergic reaction to it. So the reason my neck and face are swollen and red and I itch all over and covered in hives is because I'm having an allergic reaction to it. Yay raw. So if hopefully this will keep me from scratching myself. Like the whole time I've been like this all day. I'm like, no, I need to just watch Ace of the Diamond and be fine. So and it's also been like really hot and rainy and humid today. So it's like hair, who cares? So no, y'all didn't come here to see me look glamorous. You came here to see me talk about this baseball manga. So let's do that, shall we? I'm pretty excited to see what's going to happen to our boys and to see what the conclusion is going to be. So I got my notepad ready. I'm ready to take notes at the end of each chapter unless something pops up and I just have to write it down. I took a lot of notes last volume. A lot. So I've also been told, hopefully this is volume 23, so I still got like 5 volumes to go until then, but I was told on Discord that there is a volume that I'll need to like have Wine Chan come out for, and I was like, okay. And apparently that's supposed to be volume 28, so Kelsey and Zero Anti-Zero, they colluded together in Discord and told me that's the volume I need to read with Wine Chan. So hopefully by then I'll have all this antibiotic stuff out of my system and then I can enjoy Wine Chan, because right now I'm sticking to coffee, no adult beverages for Romania Black while she's on antibiotics. So, or recovering from them. So in any case, let's not waste any more time, shall we? We are going to dive into Ace of the Diamond, volume 23, and see what's going on. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this! Oh, wow, this volume! This volume is like one of my favorites in a while, because of CHRIS-SENPAI. No, this volume is great. Man, Sose turning out to be a lot more of a opponent than I thought they'd be at first. I was like, oh, I thought that this would be like an easy game. I thought we'd like breeze through this quarterfinal going into Sims. Nope. Wow, this is... And you know what's amazing is that Ace of the Diamond, we are into the 200 chapters of the second act. We had like, what, 200 and something chapters in Act 1. We're nearly 500 chapters into this series, and there is still new things that Terajima can do with a team, with an opponent, that surprise you, that you're like, huh, okay, wow, sure, I'm floored. I'm like, it's amazing to me. I'm like, wow, okay, look at that. Just look at that, won't ya? It's great. I'm so surprised by what Terajima keeps giving us in this game. And honestly, Sousei is a lot more of an opponent and much more of a challenge than I thought they were going to be. I'm like, okay, so Furuya's problem is he's not struggling, not really. It's just Miyuki is struggling. That's the fun thing. Miyuki's having a time, and Koshu's figured it out. And it's like, oh, I want Koshu to go talk to him in the dugout so badly. We'll get to it. But I'm like, oh my God, wow, just, you all are saints and angels and the best people in the world, because you did not spoil chapter 203 and 204 Mentor Chris with me. You didn't spoil that chapter, and I am kind of elated and on cloud 9 because of you all. So yeah, oh my God. So let's talk about it. Let's just talk about it. So yeah, we start at the bottom of the 8th. We're still, God, we even got Ichidai's game. I forgot about Ichidai's game. We got that to finish up. So God, apparently it was 3-6 in the bottom of the 8th, and during the 5th inning and the 7th inning, Sensen managed to score 3 runs. Amahisa looking free and happy as a clam, and Sawamura looking like fire eyes and fierce. He's just like an opponent, and Amahisa's like, everything's great. And then KOSHU, of course, KOSHU just has his eyes locked on a Sawamura. KOSHU is like the most loyal of wolf boys, the most loyal of dogs. He's like, Sawamura, he's trying to like crack the code with Sawamura. And I'm like, there's not really much of a code to be cracked. Our boy is just smarter than he appears. We'll talk about that. But yeah, and so I feel like when Sensen's coach praised him after pitching in the 8th, when he praised him and they had one more time up to bat and they were down by 3 runs and then it ends up being 4 runs. I think that Maki knew at that point that they lost, because he has this moment where the coach is like, nice pitching. And for the first time, the coach like genuinely praises him as an ace. And he just like, you see Maki's face go, you see him get the grimace, like he knew. He could almost see like it was the end, but they kept going. And in the 9th, they end up losing 7-3 to Ichidai Third. And Terui looks a lot different in the manga than he does in the anime. I didn't recognize him at first, and I was like, oh, that's Terui. Oh, okay, the guy that thinks Amahisa's weird because he doesn't know how to read Amahisa, right? And I love that he calls him, he's like, you're a murder weapon in human form. And Terui's like, is that supposed to be a compliment? It's so funny. But yeah, so he pitched the 8th and 9th innings. Terui is still creeped out by Amahisa. And the funny thing about it is Amahisa was being genuinely nice. Amahisa was like, good job, you're a weapon in human form. And he's like, I don't understand you. I'm like, Amahisa's not saying anything bad to you. That's the funny part, right? But yeah, so Senko got a lot of good first years. And the funny thing is, they told us back in the anime, like way back when we were getting to see each team, like Yakushi, that's a really good comparison because Yakushi did not get good first years. They got lots of diamonds to polish out of their third years, right? Senko, they told us in the anime, like way back when we were first talking about the first years, Senko got some good first years. So they were kind of prefacing that, and it really showed here because they didn't even have to use their ace pitcher. Amahisa could sit out the quarterfinals, and they won easy peasy lemon squeezy, just like that against Sensen. Poor Maki. But yeah, you know what I love about this? I love about this in that Koshu and Nabe are nervous. Koshu and Nabe are like, as soon as the game is over, they're sitting there being like, okay, God, Amahisa didn't have to play this game. He's got this repertoire. Their team can do that. They can do all this. Like, they're getting really negative. And then Sawamura, he's been sitting here like doing this like chin scratching the whole time. And then our optimistic sunshine boy, he's like, well, what if we just like forced them to connect? What if we baited them into pitches? And since that seems to be what they're wanting to do. And I love the face that Koshu and Nabe get. They both are like, Sawamura, did you just strategize? did you just come up with a strategy? And Sawamura's like, yes, I have that ability. I'm not stupid. He's just, Sawamura, God. He's like, we might as well try. He's like, I'll do my best and we'll see what we can do with it. And Nabe and them were like, oh my gosh. And then at that point, Koshu asks Sawamura why he doesn't have a slider or a curveball in his repertoire. And Sawamura's like, well, I kind of do. He's like, you want to catch for me, Koshu, and find out? And he's like, sure. And Nabe's just like, I have these reliable Koheis. I'm very blessed. But he's also like, Miyuki told you not to pitch that he told you not to pitch that that curveball or slider, but Sawamura's like, Miyuki doesn't have to know, right? I definitely like the idea. They're setting up some things here, right? Sawamura's like, it's not going to be easy, but I'm going to do my best. And Nabe kind of has this ominous ending of the chapter 202. He ends it ominously being like, well, we have to keep winning first. And I'm like, Nabe, quit being pessimistic. But I thought about this as we were reading the chapters, and I almost wonder if this volume in specifics is setting up for Koshu and Sawamura to be a battery. if it's setting up for the semifinals for KOSHU and Sawamura to be a battery, because we're having Sawamura and KOSHU connect in this volume and realize, okay, you and I need to, like, because Sawamura's like, here's what we could do. And KOSHU's like, okay, well, what if, could you do a slider and a curveball? And he's like, I could for you. And KOSHU's like, well, let's practice it. And Nabe's like, Miyuki said not to. And Sawamura's like, eh. But I feel like it's setting up for Sawamura and KOSHU to work together as a battery in either the semifinal or the final, if they make it past this quarterfinal. I thought we were going to be scot-free, but then this volume comes along and I'm like, I don't know how to feel. So, but yeah, I feel like they're setting up, we'll talk about Miyuki as we get through this volume and what's setting up for his character, because this volume was not so much about Furuya, but more about Miyuki, I think. And so we're going to set that up here. But also KOSHU being like, okay, what can we do, Sawamura? And Sawamura will be like, here's how we're going to do it. And it's setting up for Sawamura and KOSHU to be a battery. It's setting it up in this volume. And the one thing is them both pitter-patter bantering back and forth after the Ichidai Third game and Nabe being like, look at you, Kohei's, you're so reliable. I love you all. And so KOSHU, I love that in this moment, KOSHU notices that Sawamura gets the text and it's from Chris. And Sawamura's like all smiles and KOSHU's like, are you talking to Amahisa? And he's like, no, it's CHRIS-SENPAI! And starts instantly gushing, and KOSHU's like, I don't know who this is. I want KOSHU to meet Chris so bad. I need KOSHU and Chris to meet and talk, because here's the thing. KOSHU has been trying to get Miyuki to tell him about Sawamura, because KOSHU wants to form a battery with Sawamura and for it to be really good. And Miyuki, in traditional Miyuki fashion, he gets on like a spiritual level with Sawamura, but he has no clue how to articulate it in words. And so when KOSHU asks him about Miyuki, he's like, I don't know, we're a good battery. I guess you just gotta read him. And KOSHU's like, that doesn't help me at all. Miyuki's not good at communicating that sort of thing to KOSHU. KOSHU needs to talk to Chris, who is very good at communicating. And then I want KOSHU, Chris, and Sawamura to like practice batting and pitching and catching together, and for Chris to give KOSHU advice. It's all I need. I'm not asking for much. But yeah, so I like that Chris, he's just like, Chris, it's CHRIS-SENPAI. And so he gets the text from him about tomorrow's game, which I'm glad that Terajima and Sawamura, and then Sawamura did not forget that he wasn't pitching tomorrow. He was like, oh, darn it, Chris is going to come and he's not going to see me pitch. But then instead of whining about it and being sad about it, he tells Chris, it's not going to matter. We're going to win anyway with Furuya pitching. I was on cloud 9 for chapter 203 and 204. Let me tell you, I was on cloud 9. I was living it up. So Seidou is excited for the Sose game, but by excited, I mean they're also like super like nervous and analyzing and trying to figure things out. But they're also excited because the third years are coming. Specifically, Masako, Ryo are coming alongside Chris. Kuromochi's excited to see Ryo. He establishes that Haruichi has not seen Ryo since Senbatsu, so that's pretty important to note. And then Masashi gets past the Seki special. He manages to bat past it. He's so blunt and earnest, and all the other team members are like, Masashi, we can take a note from you. Look at you. And then Sose, we go back to Sose, and he has, at first, I thought he had Chris's dead shark eyes, because he seemed like he did. And it's given an explanation in the final chapter of this volume, which we will talk about when we get to it. But honestly, in hindsight, I don't think it's so much as, it could be Chris's dead shark eyes. It could also be KOSHU's expression, because KOSHU doesn't have any like little light in his eyes. His eyes are very like dull, and you don't see the pupil in his eyes ever. So I feel like Sose, like Nagira, he could be both Chris and KOSHU, who are very similar. So there's that. But yeah, Coach Yojiro, what a weird oddball. They even call him an oddball in this, but he's genius. He's like if Hisoka from Hunter x Hunter and Raizo Todoroki had a baby. That's him. I'm like, he seems so aloof and so nonchalant, but he is a fiend. He is a devil. He is a wolf in sheep's clothing. I'm convinced. He also has kind of like an Oikawa vibe to him from Haikyuu in the weirdest of ways. Kind of like a trolling Oikawa vibe. But I thought it was hilarious that Sose, when they were ranking the pitchers that they could possibly come up to face, they put Furuya as the toughest pitcher to face, Amahisa, and then Mei. I wonder how Mei would feel feel knowing he received the bronze medal from Sousei in terms of who was the best pitcher. He'd be affronted. He'd be like, excuse me, I'm the king. And they're like, well, he's like the third best. I'm like, oh my God, it was great. Wonderful. But yeah, if they say if they can beat Seidou, they're fine. So they really think Seidou's the wild card. They think that if they can get past Seidou, then they'll be able to face on Ichidai Third. And then I love that no one cares about the team in the in the semifinals with Inashiro. Nobody cares. They're gonna lose. I love how in every game so far, nobody Inashiro has faced. Everybody's like, who cares? I'm just baffled. I'm baffled. So in the semifinals, it's gonna be Inashiro likely, Ichidai, and then either Seidou or Sose, and then the team that was up to play after Seidou and Sose, which we don't even know that team, so they don't matter. I'm like, okay. I'm like, oh my God, that's just Terajima. Nobody can stop Mei Narumiya now. It's hilarious. But Nagira saying they want to crush a powerhouse's ambition and just stomp it, but never mind that. Let's go back to the chapter where Sawamura called Chris a lifesaver. I can't. Chris is one of my favorites, and him and Sawamura's relationship is so beautiful and perfect. And now that he's graduated, Sawamura's just elevated him. KOSHU is like, who is this person you call a lifesaver? And KOSHU wasn't around for the yips. He wasn't around for Sawamura's dark, dark moments. And so Sawamura is just gushing about Chris. He's like, you need to meet him, KOSHU. Yes, he does. He needs to meet KOSHU. They need to talk. You need to see these things, KOSHU. I love that Chris is held into such high regard by Sawamura, and Sawamura's like, he taught me everything about baseball. I'm like Miyuki may be the heart and soul of the battery of him and Sawamura, but Chris was the first. And Sawamura's like, Chris is my mentor. He's like my big brother. He's like my role model, my idol. It's like Sawamura, like Chris hangs the moon. I'm like, There's a tiny part of me that ships Chris and Sawamura. A tiny part. But for the most part, it's like such a mentor-mentee relationship that I'm like, nah. It's like a big brother, little brother thing. It's like, it's too perfect. It's like BFFs. It's like Sawamura melted the dark, cold heart of CHRIS-SENPAI, and now I need KOSHU to understand what the impact of Sawamura can be in full form. I need to see it. I want KOSHU to meet him. I'm like, if you can have that happen, even if it's for like a conversation after this game, that'd be great. Get KOSHU, get his number, please. And so then we have chapters 204, which I love all of the third years showing up and seeing them. Masako has that stupid striped shirt on that he wore back in season 1. He's slimmed down, lost 20% of body fat. I'm like, good job, Masako. Rio and Chris have gotten haircuts. They've had a glow up. I'm like, what? And Chris with a Cardinals shirt on? I was like, yes, yes, yes. It's so good. I love it. I love it. But then Rio's not been in the manga for 2 panels, and he's already like bashing Sawamura. I was like, feels good to have Rio back, right? He's teasing Sawamura. We have and there's Kunoda, Masaki, and Fumiya. I remember Fumiya and Masaki a bit. I feel bad that I don't remember them that well. I remember Fumiya more than I do Masaki, and I feel bad that I don't remember them that well. So I'm sure somebody in the comments that's like a huge Masaki and Fumiya fan is gonna be like, how could you forget them? And I'm gonna be like, I'm sorry. Chris's light was too overpowering. But Nagira, he seems emo and dead serious, but we get more behind why him and Nara are the way that they are by the end of this volume, and then suddenly it all makes sense, and I'm like, okay. That makes sense. It all comes to full circle at the end of this volume. I was like, okay. So, but Sawamura, he's cheering. Furuya is fired up. They have the lineup of the quarterfinals. I love the big spread that we get. It's really cool. It's wonderful. And the reporters talking up that this is Kataoka's dream team. They're like, this is the team that Kataoka has wanted from the start. Having the luxury of the pitching squad that he does. Yeah, he's got Kaneda. Kaneda's there too as like a relief pitcher, but he's got Nori, he's got Sawamura, he's got Furuya. He has pitchers with a diverse repertoire that are all different and all very good. And their batting, they acknowledge in this volume, the batting is nearly to the par that it was set at the end of season 1. Because season 1's team was great, with the third years. But offensively, they were great. They just didn't have the pitching squad they do now. But now they're kind of getting the best of both worlds. We were talking in the Discord about, Kelsey brought this up, of what I thought about this team now versus the team of third years. And it's really hard, right? Because she was saying in the Discord or in some other online communities, people were saying that, like, this team was still not as good as the team from season 1. I argue they are, only because they're more well-rounded. Like, Tamba was good, but he wasn't great, and he was kind of... Nori didn't have the confidence at the time that he did now, and Furuya and Sawamura were babies. Like, the pitching squad was nothing like it is now. It's so much better. And I feel like, yeah, the batters as a whole may not be up entirely to par with the third years like Tetsu and Rio and them, but they're nearly up to par, plus the pitching squad is much better. So I think if you combine those two together, yeah, they're better than the team in season 1. I think there's a lot of nostalgia to the third years, but I also feel like, and Kelsey was commenting on this, how you know, we didn't get to see the third years in season 1 through their dark times. We saw like one episode of flashback and we're like, wow, weren't those fun times when they were struggling? And then with this current team, we've spent 2 seasons watching them struggle. And so you kind of see them build their way up. So the greatness that builds isn't as noticeable as it was in season 1, but I think it's there. And I think that this team is probably a little bit better than the third years and first years than season 1's team. I think it's a little bit better now. I really think that it is, right? I feel like in season 1, it was like every game we were like, are we going to win? Is Seidou going to somehow make it? And in this season now, we're like, no, we're going to be fine. It's tense, but we're not like doom and gloom like season 1, right? It's not the same vibe. So I do think this team is stronger. It's just, is it strong enough? That's the question, right? And it's still evolving. It's still growing, even throughout this tournament. So that makes it harder to kind of predict, right? But I do think that this is the best team Katioka's put together or could put together to go to nationals. So are they going to go there? That's the question, right? But Sawamura calling Furuya a bazooka. I love it. Furuya a bazooka. And so it's not a good sign when the very first pitch of the game is a pop fly right off the bat. But Furuya handles it well. Furuya handles it great. He's like, it's great. My whole thing with this volume is Furuya is not the issue. I think Furuya's fine. He's doing the best that he can. He's in a good mindset. Sawamura's cheering him on. It's great. It's Miyuki that's starting to get confused and struggling, which is unusual, right? But for the first time that we've seen in this series, Miyuki's like, I can't figure out their game. He's like, I don't know what pitch they're targeting. Like, they're not consistent. What's going on? And Miyuki's trying to wrap his head around it. And the coach, who's doing this the whole time, the coach is just this weirdo in the box that he can't figure out, right? Because all the other coaches who have challenged Miyuki in their strategizing have been like the coach from the last team that they faced and Sakaki. Like, those coaches, they were challenging Miyuki, right? And trying to beat this kid. The coach for Sose doesn't care about Miyuki. He's not even looking at him. Doesn't care. He's just sitting there with his hands under his armpits being like, come on, guys, let's do something. Doesn't care. And Miyuki can't figure it out. But so Furuya has some doubts, but Sawamura backs him up. He's like, come on, you can do this. And him shouting from the dugout, like his words of encouragement. And the image of Chris watching Sawamura be the ace. It's better, I feel, it's almost better. I want Sawamura to pitch and for Chris to see him pitch as the ace, but this is almost just as good because it's him showing Chris, like, I'm the ace and look what I do for my team. It's like, it's so good. I'm like, it's such a great moment. And Chris being so proud of him. I mean, right before that, when Furuya was having a little bit of an issue in the pitching, I love that Rio was a straight up savage and was like, man, this rhythm seems nostalgic. I was like, oh my God, Rio, you brutal beast. And even Sawamura was like cutting Furuya with his words. But Chris being proud of Sawamura and thinking about that text that he sent that they'll be just fine. Oh my God, I love it. So then we get Nara Koji coming up to bat, and Miyuki kind of laments. He's like, man, we were at the Tokyo Rep team, but you haven't even looked at me since we got here. Like, Nara's not even glancing Miyuki's way. He's like, so we're enemies, huh? Not beating around the bush, huh? It's like, oof. And then Sawamura, like, gets on to Furuya being like, you kind of sucked it up earlier. You might want to get on it. Like, do your best. And Furuya's like, I know. He's like, I know what you're expecting of me, Sawamura. And then Sawamura being like, fire it. I was like, oh. And Miyuki admitting that Sawamura's right. That's the mindset they gotta have. I'm like, Sawamura, if only you could listen into Miyuki's head. If only you knew. If only you knew. But yeah, Miyuki saying your fastball is your best weapon and the essence of who you are. Sawamura is a complicated sunshine boy. He has the numbers, just like all of the different like layers to his personality. And Furuya is just straightforward and simple power. Fastball, powerful, that's all he needs. Sawamura is much more intricate, which is fun because they're so different, right? So Furuya gets the third out. Chris watching Sawamura and then remembering the text where Sawamura was like, I'm not pitching tomorrow, but it's okay. We'll be victorious no matter what. And seeing Sawamura and Furuya getting along and seeing them both with Miyuki, I was like, oh my god, it's all I could ask for. Terujima's like just showering us with riches of CHRIS-SENPAI. I'm like, it's just the most amazing thing. Yes, please. And I just did heart eyes. Him showing just how much he's grown. And Chris getting to see how much Sawamura has grown. And Sawamura coming out of his slump. It's so satisfying. So satisfying. Chris being so proud. And when he's like, because Rio laments, he's like, oh, well, Furuya's doing better. So I guess we won't see Sawamura pitch in this game. Darn, I guess we'll have to call that a done deal. And Chris saying like, it's okay. I can't wait to see what the future holds. He better come to the final, damn it. If Inashiro and Seidou make it to the final, CHRIS-SENPAI had better be there. He'd better be there. I think Seidou is going to win this. I do. But man, Terajima is making it hard to tell. And I'm like, ugh. I just want them to pull it off. But Terajima knows how to amp up the anxiety. Just when you think that they're going to win, he's like, no, it's going to be a little harder than you think. And I'm like, Terajima. So Nagira's pitches. So the thing about the two-seamer is that they have it pretty much timed out that Nagira's pitches, Nara knows exactly where to go to receive them. And the infielders know exactly where to go to receive them. Like they've timed it out where the pitches have a pattern and they can figure out where they're supposed to go. And I wondered, wasn't Nara a pitcher? Didn't they say in the Tokyo rep that he was a pitcher? Because I thought he was a pitcher at the start of this. I thought Nara was going to be the one pitching, not Nagira. But I feel like he was a pitcher, so maybe that was the case. But I feel like he has experience working with the catcher as a battery, so therefore him and the catcher kind of know. He knows from the catcher where the pitches are going to end up at and knows the plays and the calls. So I thought that might have been the case. But they get Kuramochi and Haruichi out just like it's nothing. And I'm like, oh, crap. And so the reporters say it's the pitch sequences of Sose that are targeted to the infielders, and it's a pattern. It's simple and therefore unshakable. And I'm like, oh. Because that's the thing. It's simple but unshakable. Again, going back to that whole thing about how simple is best. You don't have to be complicated. You don't have to be crazy. You just got to be simple and effective. And that's kind of their motto with this, right? So Furuya is still on fire, but the one guy says, come on, give me something closer. Like they're starting to figure it out. And Miyuki can't read the coach. He can't read what they're targeting, and he calls it creepy. He's like, it's creepy when I can't see what's coming. And it's like, for Miyuki's stumped for once. And we'll talk about this because Koshu figures it out. But I'm like, Koshu, get to the dugout and tell Miyuki. Spread your knowledge. But anyway, my Zono, I love that Zono gets the out and he has that face. He has like the crazy face. It's been so long since we've seen it. And we get to see the inside of Zono's hat and it says like heart eye and true strength. I'm like, yes, I love it. It's great. But yeah, Chris, for the first time, looks a little bit worried. He looks a little bit worried about the batter that tried to make contact with the low inside pitch. And it's almost like Chris is starting to figure it out as well. Again, Chris and Koshu seem very similar. And so Chris and Koshu both seem like they're figuring it out what the issue is. But Miyuki's just stumped. He's like, well, but no. And so I love that Yui is calling Furuya's pitch the bazooka too, just like Sawamura. And Furuya's like, quit, it's catching on. But then, Masashi, our boy Masashi, the third years, I like that the third years, the retired third years, are like, oh, is that Tetsu's kid brother? They're like, I bet if he makes contact, he'll knock it out of the park. That's Tetsu's thing. Masashi is not the greatest batter. He doesn't have a good average, but when he does hit, it's really good. And he manages, they're like, he's trying to hit the Seki special, and he does. All that time practicing, he gets a fastball, and out the park it goes. So if they don't end up scoring at all throughout the rest of this game, Masashi's going to be the one that caused them to win. I'm like, 0-1. We'll see. I like that Sosei's coach calls him abnormal. Yeah, he is. And there's so many shots where it's like, his helmet gets sideways. And he's just like in all these goofy positions. I'm like, Masashi, you whimsical beast. You know what? Maybe Masashi and Kosei would be friends. Maybe Kosei and Masashi would be friends. They're weird. They're both kind of odd. I feel like they'd get along. But yeah, Nagira. And at that moment, the catcher is going to call a timeout with Nagira. And Nagira's like, no need, I got this. It's fine. Like, he just takes it in stride. He's like, we're good. I'm like, shit. All right. He has a serious look. He's okay. He looks dead inside, but he's okay. And then Nara has a serious look too. And again, when we get to chapter 210, it all gets explained. I'm like, okay. It all is making more sense. But, so he looks serious and he manages to get the 3 outs by getting Kanemaru and Haruichi out. And I like that Chris goes, I would have preferred them falling apart. I'm like, yeah, I bet you would, Chris. I'm like, what a savage. So it's top of the 5th, still 0-1, and Miyuki still can't read them. For 5 innings, it has been bugging Miyuki. It's like, I don't get it. What's their strategy? What's their chess move? I've got the chessboard here. I've made my move. What are they targeting? What are they trying to do? And Sosei's coach is like, just target what you feel like. We'll make the rules up as we go. It's like Miyuki is expecting Sose to play chess against them, and the coach is like, we're going to play checkers instead. And doesn't tell Miyuki. That's the crazy part, is that he's like, this coach is very much about individualistic things, which is the polar opposite of Seidou. He's all about individualizing what they do. And this is going to tie back to the two-seamer here in a minute. But the coach is like, just target what works best for you. He's like, don't hit what's beyond your ability. That's it. That's the strategy. He's like, there is no strategy. It's like, just do what you feel like. It's very similar to Arabe's team, to Norikane in that sense, but it's different. It's different because Norikane was all about like the modern trends. It was about modernizing Japanese baseball. It was about getting things away from the traditional in terms of the style that is played. How Sose is different than Seidou is all about, no, here's the target, here's the play, here's the training. We all do this as a team. And for Sose, the coach is like, everybody learns differently. So let's just individualize everything. And everybody just learns what they learn best. And we'll make you the best individual players. And then we'll all just play as a team together that way. Does that seem cool? It's kind of like if Inashiro weren't douches. No, I'm joking. If Inashiro weren't divas, is what I mean. If Inashiro, because Inashiro's kind of in the same boat. Inashiro all plays like they're a team of really good individuals that work together as a cohesive team. Sose seems kind of the same way. They all individualize, but he kind of leaves it up to you. But it's kind of genius in a way, because when he says, don't hit what's beyond your ability, he puts the ball into, it's kind of a merging of Seidou and Inashiro in a way, because it's like Inashiro in that they're all a team of individuals that do their own thing, and they're all really good and they just work together as a unit. But it also is kind of like Kataoka's individualization towards his team members, in that he's like, how do I want to phrase this? It's kind of like Seidou in that it's you kind of set your own pace and what is your end goal. I was trying to connect it to Seidou somehow, and now it's lost on me. But it's kind of like, you don't hit what's beyond your ability. You know your own limits. Where do you want to end up at, right? And that's kind of like Seidou a little bit. But it's genius because the ball is in your court. Okay, what I was going to say is that with Seidou, Katioka's like, okay, how far do you want to go? If you don't want to go that far, then don't push yourself. But if you want to do this, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. It's kind of like what Sousei does. But Sousei is like, okay, if you aren't comfortable hitting this type of pitch, then don't. Because you're going to psych yourself out. The coach for Sousei is like, if we all just target inside pitches, if that's not where you're comfortable at and you can't hit the ball you're comfortable hitting, he's like, what good is that? What good is that going to do us? That's not going to do well. So he's like, instead, just hit what you're comfortable with. Don't hit what you're not. And then you'll slowly start to build up that confidence to hit more and more and to get more bold and to get a better eye on what works for you. And we see that it's working throughout this volume. We see that that strategy is allowing the pitchers, the swing of the pitches. It's throwing off Miyuki because Miyuki can't get a handle on what pitch to target with what player, because they're not, if all of them are trying to target inside pitches, Miyuki can use that to his advantage and say, okay, well, you suck at that, so we're going to do an inside pitch for you, and you're good at that, so we're going to do something different for you. But because they're not targeting any specific pitch, Miyuki can't quite figure out what pitch is going to work best on them. He's like, we could try this, but they're not targeting that, but it's just confusing the catcher. Their whole strategy is to throw the catcher off. And it's like Sosei's coach is playing Battleship, and he's like, we're going to sink the freighter first. We're going to sink, or not even the freighter, we're going to sink the Battleship right off the bat. We're going to get just it done with. Because he's like, he knows probably that the catcher is integral to making those plays with the pitchers. And he's like, if we could throw the catcher off and they don't know what pitch to send us, then we can use that to our advantage. And I'm like, that's genius. It's such a good strategy. And Miyuki's just like, they don't have any hesitation. They just do it. And the coach is like, yeah, it's kind of our strategy. I'm like, so then then we get to the chapter like 208, 209. Nagira is mad because everyone is expecting them to lose. He says the atmosphere on the stadium is lukewarm. Like, everybody's here expecting us to lose. And that's the preview leading up to chapter 210. The coach, he talks about Nagira. And, okay, this is probably my favorite part of the volume is the coaches talk. I mean, other than CHRIS-SENPAI. CHRIS-SENPAI is obviously my favorite part of the volume. But thematic-wise, Chris is still the best part. But beyond that, I love the conversation the coach has about Nagira, because it connects to so many things in this series, where he talks about Nagira, and we find out that this coach is also a teacher in the same class, and he sees Nagira that he's quiet. And it seems a lot like KOSHU, and that's what made me think in that moment. I was like, oh, he's not like Chris, he's like KOSHU. Because the coach is like, okay, Nagira's really quiet, he keeps to himself, he's not boisterous, but they reveal the secret of the two-seamer. He gets on the quest, he's quiet to himself, and he teaches them a two-seamer. He's like, you start throwing to the ground with all your might, and you start at 5 meters, you build up to 10 meters, to 15 meters, and to 18.44 meters. And he's like, and you bend the wrist to your limit the entire time. And that's the secret to building up the two-seamer. And it's been able to be passed down from generation to generation. Because I was wondering that at first. I'm like, well, wouldn't some pitchers not be able to do it? Like Sawamura's not good at sliders, but Nori is. So wouldn't your style of pitching kind of limit you on this one specific type of pitch? But it's it's adaptable and it's flexible. So his point is, like, once you get the basics down, like once you can throw a certain distance and you have the form down, you can alter it and tailor it to whatever suits you as the pitcher. So he's like, now you can grow as a pitcher however much you want to. You can alter, you are in charge of your own growth, right? So it's a way, I love how he describes it as a way to guide and interpret. He's like, everyone grows on an individual level. And Seidou kind of functions in that regard in terms of the journals that Katioka keeps. Katioka's kind of keeping an individual record through the journals. But with this, he's like, we don't just do the same training all throughout. Everybody's individualized. And everyone learns and grows at a different pace and through different means. And we have to kind of find a way to exemplify that as much as we can. And so I love that he says also, like, the way, because he was bending his wrist so much that not only allowed him to get the two-seamer, but allowed him to affect his fastball as well and make it better. And at that time, he strikes out Masashi, which Chris notes is payback for the home run earlier, showing that he wasn't fazed by it. And it's like, oh my God. And I love, this is probably my favorite lines of the whole volume. He's like, even the quiet kids have all sorts of thoughts running through their head. He's like, just because you're quiet doesn't mean you're dumb. It means you're still thinking about a lot of things. So I feel bad because I almost feel like that's like a direct reference that we should be like, remember how you like misjudged Furuya all this time and thought he was simple? Maybe you shouldn't think that. So I'm like, are they setting up Furuya to not be simple too just because he's quiet? It's like, ugh. But not only that, it's just the idea that like people like KOSHU, people like Nagira, just because they're quiet doesn't mean that they're dead inside. It doesn't mean that they're simple. It means that they're thinking of things too. They just aren't being loud and boisterous about it. And it's like, okay, yep. And the coach tears up. I love when he turns away and the team's like, why are you talking to us with your back to us? And he's like, don't worry about it. He's like, I want you to see that I'm crying. And then, so here's the thing that started out right before chapter 210 was that the crowd was like, oh, time for a bathroom break. You know, Sosei's up to bat. Furuya's not going to let anything hit past him. And I'm like, shut up, quit jinxing it, crowd. This crowd is a bunch of jinxes. I'm like, no. And Miyuki, he still hasn't figured out what the strategy is by Sose, but he knows they want to stop the momentum from getting any worse. And it's the top of the sixth. It's still 0-1. At this point, they have 2 outs, or they have a double hit. A double got hit, and now Nagira and Nara are up to bat. And KOSHU has figured out what the deal. KOSHU's like, I wonder if they're not really targeting anything specific, but only to their individual styles. I'm like, yes. So again, that was the other flag that I'm like, okay, is that going to signify that Kateoka and them are going to want to start trying to play KOSHU to get him out and get him experience on the field? Because KOSHU's smart, and he's like Chris, he's good at strategizing. It's like, and it seems like Chris had figured out what the thing was too, just like KOSHU had. So it's like, oh my God. And so then there's chapter 210, no different. And I've got it pulled up here to go through instead of, I ran out of note paper. So I was like, I'm just going to go through the chapter with you all here. But he's like, the audience in this stadium, how many of them actually want us to win? So man, and we get 2 years ago. So when May was a first year, and then there's Harada. He's like, I wanted to pitch more. And Harada's like, God, I miss Harada. So it's good to see him like briefly, you know, with little baby May. But so yeah, we see them being Sose. How many more could there even be? And it's like, And so then all their third years, they lost 4-2. So they didn't even lose by a lot. They just lost by 2 runs, right? In the last inning. It was really sad, right? In the final inning, they lost 4-2. And so we see a first year Nagira and Nara, and they're like lamenting, and they're very much like, you know, we have our third years like crying their eyes out, and these guys are like, oh, well, you know, we lost, but I didn't know our senpais were that strong. And he's like, same here. And so they were like, man, our third year senpais were so strong. They gave it their all. They're like, it was so cool, even though we lost. Like, they were in such good spirits about it, right? And then they see the spectators, and they're like, that's where they always drop out. Sose suddenly winning wouldn't be a thing for me anyway. They're just too dull. Their team lacks any flair. Like the fact that they don't stand out and they don't have any flashy players or moves. It's kind of like a jab to the audience, to us, the readers, being like, oh, they're just a boring team. And then Terajima like, what do you think now? And it's like, I feel bad. But just seeing poor, like Nagira, seeing him like be so sad by that. And then you cut down to the third years, and they're all crying and hugging each other. And the coach is like tearing up, and he's like got his hand over the ace's shoulder, and he's like, it's okay. And the coach cares. And then you see all these stuff on Twitter. Of course it's Twitter. But you see all this stuff on Twitter where they're like they're just trash talking Sose. I'm like, really? Why? Also, make note that the names of they're like food porn at Umami, and sometimes Memorial, and Wagon. I was like, and Hole in the Wall BW12. I'm like, what are these names? Food porn gets me. I'm like, I don't know if I'd take a tweet by food porn that seriously. It's a relief they did us a favor and lost. That's so freaking sad. I'm like, no wonder Nara and Nagira are like, just like bitter third years. No wonder they're like that, because they've had this chip on their shoulder that nobody roots for them, that they're just the underdog team that's never gonna win. I'm like, oh my god. Oh. And and then we cut back to Nara and Nagira, and they just look stone cold dead serious. And it's like, yeah, no shit, because they're like, this is a big deal to them. Like, so much is riding on this as their third years. And Nabe's like, now wait a minute. They're not following the theory that we thought they were at all. He's like, Miyuki has to be confused about this. And Miyuki's like, what's clear is that all of them are really good with fastballs. Even those like Furuya's. Like, yeah, Miyuki's trying to wrap his brain around all this. And Nabe's like, this is not good. And then he's like, well, let's just try to do this and that. We got to shut out Nara. And then they managed to get him cornered. And then Nara just keeps thinking back to all of the fluke win tech tweets and everything else. He's like, we're no different. It's the same for us too. Just like every other team out there, we're serious about trying to make Koshin. He's like, don't take us lightly just because we're not like the flashiest team. We still have ambitions too, you know? And he's like, we too dream about standing on the same grand stage. And then you see the coach, he's like, you did it, Nara, you made the Tokyo Rep team. It's only natural, you know? Oh, it means Coach Kunotomi recognized your talents. And they're all like, do your best. Like Nagira and Nara, like, you can do it. Oh, it's like, what's wrong with that? And then he manages to go to third. And God, Kanemaru, it hits off Kanemaru, and Kuramochi again with catching with his bare hand. He throws it to first, but he manages to make it. He manages to make it. And he's safe. His legs were just a bit better. No outs. Runners on first and third. Oh my God, and the ace is up to bat. Soichi Nagira. And we see Sawamura just standing there in the dugout like, and Koshu and Kawakami are like, is it time? And that's the chapter. Oh my God. So, again, I think my theory is that I think Seidou's going to pull it off somehow. I think it's going to happen. They're going to pull it off. I do think that they are setting up in this volume for Koshu. I don't know why I keep wanting to call him Koshu and Sawamura to be a battery in the future. I'm wondering if this is going to shake Miyuki. I hope it does not. But I'm wondering if this is going to shake Miyuki and his ability to call. If he's going to get kind of freaked out by this, being like... Because Miyuki, we've established with Sawamura, Miyuki was worried about not being able to let Sawamura shine as much as he could in the past. And Miyuki had a chip on his shoulder about this. And I'm worried that Miyuki's going to be like, He's going to be like, I don't know why I can't call this. And so I'm wondering, like, are they going to take Miyuki and Furuya out and put Koshu and Norikami in? I don't know. Kawakami, I mean, not Norikami, but I feel like Koshu's going to get some more experience after this volume. I feel like this is going to be an in for Koshu, especially if Koshu talks to Miyuki and he's like, I want Miyuki to go in the dugout and be like, hey, did you think maybe they're doing this? Because it seems like that's their strategy. But I don't know. I don't know if Kataoka would put Koshu in the quarterfinal. I don't know if he'd put Kawakami in, because Furuya's not doing bad. Furuya's fine. I don't know if they'll take Miyuki out and put Koshu in and leave Furuya, because Koshu's comfortable pitching to Furuya, or Furuya's comfortable pitching to Koshu. I wonder if they will take Miyuki out and put Koshu in, because Koshu's like, oh, I figured out what the deal is. I don't know. Maybe not, but I don't want this to shake Miyuki and to get him riled up, because we've not really seen Miyuki. We've never seen Miyuki like that. He's always been on top of things. He may be disappointed in himself and upset that he couldn't make, a pitcher do the best that he could, like he was with Sawamura. But in this case, Furuya's doing the best he can, and he's doing good. It's just Miyuki's calls, he can't figure out what to do. So that's curious. It's like the first time we see Miyuki genuinely struggle to figure out what's going on. And Nara and Nagisa and Nagira. Nagira, I think, have I called him Nagisa the last 5 minutes? I don't know. But Nagira and Nara, they want to win. And they've got a chip on their shoulder. And it's sad because we've seen kind of the dark side of media throughout this entire series. We've seen how it influences people. And we've seen the dark side of social media and how, like, everybody thought Furuya was the best in the world. And then when he suddenly wasn't, they're like, well, what's the deal? So we've seen that, like, happen with the press, and Hongo hates it. And now we see another group of people that hate it, and it's Sousei. So, I don't know, but CHRIS-SENPAI, it's like, on the one hand, CHRIS-SENPAI put me on cloud 9, and on the other hand, I'm a bit nervous, not for Furuya, but for Miyuki by the end of this volume. So, I don't know what to expect, y'all, but it's getting interesting. So, yeah. So, I hope y'all enjoyed this reaction and discussion for Volume 23. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts down below. But yeah, so Volume 24, we're still playing quarterfinals. See what's going to happen, right? I'm sure we're going to win, but I don't... How we're going to win, if it's still going to be 0-1 when we win, that's what remains to be seen. So, in any case, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. But yeah... I'll be back very soon next week with Volume 24, Chapters 211 to 219 of Ace of the Diamond. Bye.